In the past, the world belonged to the empires of Shamar and Darom. The parties were at odds with each other for a long time. The war, later called the 100-Year War, was incredibly intense and brutal. The Shamar Empire was able to win it by using the Spirit Fang. After the war ended, the Emperor of Shamar, Levine, was exiled to the northern lands, out of fear of the power of the Spirit Fang, which he used to end the war. In a world of inequality and favoritism, an unprincipled society developed, even to the point of destroying literature. However, there was someone who was able to find a common language with the spirits. 200 years later, a certain girl, holding on to the earth, promised that everything would be fine. The people of her lands were sincerely grateful to her for everything she did for them. The girl was grateful for something even after so much time. Many thought that perfumes were fiction, and over time, there were almost no believers left. People almost completely forgot about their existence. On the other hand, in a world without spirits, there was room for technological progress. Many great discoveries were made. The girl, standing with some kind of staff in her hand, announced that she and her fantastic partner had finished the job. The old woman couldn't even believe that at such a young age the girl could communicate with spirits. She even noted how in the old days fire was made with the help of the spirits of the city of Siray. However, the girl considered it a blessing, that now they are capable of many things even without souls. A man standing nearby said that once upon a time there were barren lands here, but thanks to the power of the spirits with whom their ancestors had made a pact, these territories had undergone incredible changes. He was sorry that after the 100-Year War the connection with the spirits had been broken, and the youth no longer felt them at all. And even when they wanted to free the spirits of these lands, there was no one in the area who could do it, and he thanked the girl for her help. The woman wanted to thank the girl with a gift, and asked her to take the wine that she and her husband made. The girl thanked her, saying that it was very kind of them. But the woman replied that she should thank her, because it is not every day that you see the Lord of Spirits in action. The woman asked where the young medium was going this time. The girl replied that she was going to Mount Yamamu to see an old friend. The woman asked her to be careful. She said she saw a huge monster watching her from the top of a huge tree growing in the Yamamu Mountains. The woman was sure it was a huge bearded monster. The man told the girl not to pay attention to her grandmother's horror stories, to which the old woman said that it was true. However, the girl said that she would still be more careful. The man was not sure whether this story was true, because over the past couple of years, there were fewer monsters in the area, and if we talk about large demons, then you won't meet them at all. The man said that several people from the wanted list had recently been seen nearby, and asked the girl to be careful. The girl came to the place with her boyfriend, but it seemed she was not alone here. The girl was tied up. She was lying with a completely unperturbed face. A gang of men came up to her and started looking at her. One asked the others to look at how much stuff the girl had, and her staff was not bad, in their opinion. The men thought that she was some kind of tradeswoman, and she had a pretty face. They thought that they could make a good profit if they sold her. The tied-up girl stood up and asked to ask a question. One of the men asked her what she wanted. The girl said that spirits were everywhere, but she had never seen elves. He was amazed at the nonsense this girl believed in. The girl stood with an untied rope in her hands, with an absolutely calm face. The men did not understand when she managed to untie it, for which the girl thanked her assistant Glyph. They realized that the bird had pecked the rope, and one of them gave the order to shoot at the girl's legs. The other was worried that if they crippled her, they would receive less reward for her. The girl made some kind of gesture with her fingers, and went on the attack. She hovered over the men and knocked them out with her kicks. She was very strong and even bit sometimes. The men forgot about paying and decided to just release fire on her. The girl and her boyfriend were already about to pounce on the men again. A huge shadow appeared above the men. The men were confused about what was happening. It was a monster. The monster asked what these men were doing here with his friend. The men were dumbfounded. The girl was glad to see him, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time. The monster dealt with the men, and they were horrified by this. The monster asked the girl what she was proposing to do with them, to which the girl replied that they were wanted, so it would be enough to simply tie them up and throw them in the mountains. The monster noted that the girl was still as kind as ever. The men were horrified. The girl remarked on how beautiful the view was. The monster told his friend that she also had a bottle of good wine, so they could drink while they enjoyed the wonderful view, as they could see the trains running and watch humanity flourish. The spirit era had long since ended, so the monster wanted to see the beginning of a new era. The girl remarked on how her friend, Orochi, turned out to be a romantic, to which he asked her not to mock him. People stopped believing in the existence of spirits, and no one needed his help anymore. His brothers and sisters lost their powers, and now he too is just a beast. Orochi asked how his friend, Aharu, was doing, to which she replied that she was traveling the world and freeing the remaining spirits. If the spirits wandered the earth doing nothing, they would only become weaker, harming themselves. Aharu said that if they had summoned them, then they should free them. But the dragon said that she was not obligated to do so. Orochi said that no life would be enough to do this. The girl said that she had already thought about it, and she was ready to fulfill her role, no matter how many years it took. She promised to free every spirit that remained on earth. The monster noticed that the girl had not changed at all, and was still as good-natured, but in any case, he was glad to share the delicious wine with her. The girl, clearly with sarcasm, said that she thought so, that Orochi had called her only because of the wine. Aharu and her assistant Glyph stood up and began to draw something on the ground. The girl asked the monster to crawl into the circle and began the spell. Aharu began to cast the spell. 379 years of service, with great gratitude and respect, I, Aharu, release you. The path is open. Orochi thanked the girl and told her that she was doing well. It was like a job. You quickly get the hang of it. And finally, the girl asked if the monster had any regrets, to which he replied that he regretted not being able to help his fellow humans, but when the war ended, he was able to see how people from all over the world cooperate, and also enjoyed wine in the company of a good friend. And lastly, Orochi regretted her friend's departure, but asked her to see him off. There were tears on the girl's face. Aharu raised her head and said that she was ready to see him off, with a smile on her face. The girl began to cast a spell, saying that the contract was now broken. Aharu said goodbye to her friend, saying goodbye to the great Snake King. Orochi said goodbye to the girl, saying goodbye to the last elf. Over time, people on Earth no longer needed perfume. To protect the spirits that were stuck on the ground and send them home, it was necessary to go to the edge. The girl suggested to Glyph, her assistant, to go by train. And this is how the long journey of the last elf began. When the flower bloomed in the garden, the girl promised to return. She was asked to be careful. Aharu was told that she would always be waited for. Once upon a time, elves taught people to communicate with spirits. Thanks to the magic of spirits, people's lives became much more comfortable. But the power of spirits depends on people's faith in them, so people and spirits lived side by side. But after the 100 Years' War, due to fear of their power, interaction with spirits was banned. Later, there was a leap in technological development, and they were no longer needed. People began to forget about those who helped them in the war. The spirits lost their powers. Hundreds of years later, spirits and elves and their existence were forgotten. The girl and Glyph got off the train. The girl was surprised that the trains turned out to be very comfortable. Aharu and Glyph reached the capital. It was very crowded and quiet. The girl got to work. She said that they needed to head to the Adventurers Guild, Blade and Shield. The guild was always the best place to gather information. Many even said that they saw spirits. The guild had to be somewhere nearby, and the girl decided to ask the first stranger she met. The girl approached the young man and said that she wanted to ask him something. Aharu asked him where she could find the Adventurers Guild. The guy said that the guild was right down the road, and to the right, there would be a sign there. It turned out to be not that far. The girl and her assistant came. It was a place where adventurers from all over the city gathered. A girl stood in front of Aharu and greeted her. It was a guild bar. Aharu didn't understand anything, but they told her that they were glad to see her in the guild, Blade and Shield. The girl asked again if it was really an adventurer's guild. The girl asked Aharu if she was alone, to which she answered positively. The girl thought that most likely Aharu wanted to take on some task. They had missions for every taste, from exterminating monsters to escorting. But after the army seriously took up the extermination of monsters, there were much fewer of them. If no one takes on quests, the guild won't see any income, so they opened a tavern here as a small side job. Aharu thought that they must be having a hard time. She pointed to a distant table and asked who these people were, to which the girl answered that they were just a bunch of drunks. A man came up to Aharu and said that he saw her here for the first time and would explain the rules of this guild to her. First of all, the guy told the girl to definitely try the steak burger. On the other side, someone was shouting at them to pick up their order. Aharu noted that things were going well in their guild, which the girl confirmed. Aharu was glad that there were so many quests here. Someone addressed the girl, and she turned her head. She recognized this guy It was the one who showed her the way. He apologized to the girl for his impudence, but wanted to ask her to listen to him. The girl said that she was a great listener by nature. The guy realized that she was what they call an elf, but he was not clear what the girl was doing in the guild. Haru explained to him that she was collecting information to try to find spirits in this region, and in the guild it turns out you can also earn some money. The guy understood everything and asked her if she could accept his task. Haru said that she was not against it. The girl decided that it would be some kind of gratitude for showing her the right path, and decided to take it on. The guy began to register Haru's task. The girl's mission was to eliminate a pack of monsters in a mansion on the outskirts of the city. She was asked to be careful and wished a safe journey. The girl who worked at the bar said parting words so that the spirits would protect Haru and Glyph on their way. Haru asked what the guy's name was, to which he replied that his name was Samuel. The girl at the bar did not understand who Haru was talking to. Haru asked the guy to show her the way to the mansion. They came to the place, to which the girl responded that the place was quite creepy. The girl had to destroy the monsters wandering around the mansion. The mansion was rather gloomy and overgrown. The guy led the girl to the gate, and they went inside. The girl asked the guy to
I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel, liked and wrote a comment, rating this manga on a scale from 1 to 10. Your opinion is very important to me. This will help me better understand what my audience is interested in, because you are really important to me.
Slowly step back. 3 monsters stood in front of them. Haru began to strike them. The guy was shocked. The girl said that there were only a couple of monsters left. Their souls get their power by absorbing life force from other creatures. It is a predator that hunts its victims. The girl said that it will take a little more time and asked the guy to hide somewhere for now. The girl walked forward along the corridor, and monsters began to attack her one after another. Haru began to notice that the monsters were being pulled somewhere, and they were flying away. Glyph pressed himself against the girl's shoulder, and they went after the monsters. The girl stood right on a pool of blood. A girl appeared out of nowhere. Floating in the air, she spoke about the need to return. The monsters began to whine. Arahu approached the woman, and she began to transform into someone. The girl turned into a monster and asked Araha to get lost, to which she replied that unfortunately she could not do this. The girl began to cast a spell. My name is the guide Haru, in the name of the guide. I will send you back to hell. The monster was in a bad mood and only got angry. The girl asked her friend Glyph to hide while it was not safe here. The monster began to attack the girl again. Haru fought it off. Her anger was strong, and the girl had to act quickly. That monster woman was absorbing the life force of monsters. The monster began to twist and turn in all directions. The girl didn't expect that the monster could do tricks. Haru understood that the monster was in pain, but she asked him not to be afraid, because she would help her. Haru began to cast the spell again. My name is Guide Haru. I open the way. The contract that binds you to this world is now invalid. The girl began to force the termination. The monster begged him not to do it. Samuel stepped forward in front of the monster. Addressing her, he asked her to come to her senses. He shouted at the monster, calling it by its name, Millie. Haru screamed for him to move away. Her bonds might not hold. The monster became furious and grabbed the boy and the girl. The female monster ran away somewhere. Only a hole in the wall remained of her. Samuel was clearly worried about her. Haru, lying on the ground, asked the guy why he stopped her, to which the guy apologized and explained that this monster was his wife Millie. When he was sent to war, the boy promised that he would return when the hothouse flower blossomed, but in battle he was seriously wounded and died. However, a spirit that happened to fly by helped him to revive and return to this world. But soon after his death, he heard a rumor that Millie had been eaten by monsters in the mansion, and she made a contract with the spirits to wait for Samuel. She waited for her husband in this mansion for many years. She made a contract called waiting. When too much time passed, the waiting contract turned into a curse. Over time, her diet should change, and it may include not only monsters but also people. The guy was terrified. Samuel knelt down and asked Mrs. Ahara to save his wife by any means necessary. The girl patted him on the shoulder and promised that she would do so. This is why Haru came here. But she needed Samuel's help. At that time, Millie, bewitched, as if waiting for her husband there for eternity, and she was very sad. She did not know how much longer she had to wait for him, and she promised to kill anyone who interfered with him. Akara interrupted her monologue and decided to start the second round. Millie turned in her direction. The monster became angry and began to transform into even greater evil. Haru promised that this time she would see things through to the end. The girl crouched down to the ground. The monster lost her, while the girl again began to cast a spell. "My name is Guide Aharu. I open the way. The contract that binds you to this world is now invalid. Forced termination." The monster began to transform into a girl. The magic went away, and the girl fell right on top of her husband. He held her head and begged her to come to her senses. Aharu explained that she had to not only send the spirits home, but also free those who had made a contract with them, because if this was not done, the contract would not be terminated. Nothing but suffering would come their way. The girl called Samuel to follow her. She wanted to let the two of them talk. The guy apologized to his wife that he couldn't keep his promise and left her alone. The girl, lying in the arms of the guy, was glad that the guy had finally returned from the war. Millie, crying, told the guy that he had kept his promise after all, because he had returned when the flowers had bloomed. The guy did not understand what they were talking about. If there were no flowers where they were. The girl and the boy turned towards Aharu with tears in their eyes. The boy closed his eyes and said thank you to Aharu. Aharu began her spell. This time the girl sent both of them to eternal rest. Aharu returned to the guild bar, where the same girl who usually gives out quests was waiting for her. She was defeated by the fact that Aharu completed the quest in just one night. She was thanked for the work she had done. The girl asked him to wait for her while she went to get a reward. The girl, turning to Glyph, told him that they had done a good job. Glyph completely agreed with her. The guys who were sitting behind her turned to the girl. The girl approached them. They had terribly dissatisfied faces, and remembered that this was the same club for lovers of something stronger, saying this out loud. On their table was the very popular Blade and Shield steak burger. The guys stood up and with smiles on their faces told the girl that she had done a great job with the task and decided to treat her. Aharu thanked the guys. At the place where Aharu once freed her friend Orochi, there were already other people. Some girl was looking for something with binoculars, while the guy who was next to her was told that from a tree which was located among the mountains, a huge monster sometimes looks out. The guy approached the girl and said with confidence that if the locals were to be believed, the great spirit Orochi lived in these mountains. The girl said that this could not be, because this information was already outdated. The girl confidently said that there was no Orochi here, as well as other spirits in principle. The guy did not understand how they could just disappear, because they had lived on these lands for centuries. The girl asked him to make an urgent report. One of the great spirits has disappeared. The Snake King Orochi is a great spirit who survived a 100-year war. The girl was interested in only one thing. Could he have been killed, and who did it? From the information, it was a very strong spirit. A certain girl, a spirit killer, was looking for a spirit, but she came across the wrong one and killed it. But there was no time for sadness, and she moved on to the next one. Empire of Shamar. War Council. There was a conversation between two men. They had a report that was mentioned in the investigation. They thought that one of the great spirits had fallen. One of them, the general of the Shamar Empire, Bert Advers, ordered to urgently find one of those who could kill Orochi, alive or dead. After the 100-year war, the belief in spirits faded. It was no longer possible to make a contract with them, but the remaining ones still posed a threat. The Empire had to take control of them. No one could know about it, otherwise they would have problems. Cope. Great Empire of Shamar. Ruins of the Moonlit Night. That's where Aharu was at the moment. The night was cold. Aharu moved on to the second task. The goal of the task was to destroy the monsters that roamed here at night and attack people passing by. At that time, many soldiers made contracts with spirits. The girl reached the edge of the mountain and saw soldiers walking below them. The girl felt that they had a terrible contract and tried to help them as soon as possible. The girl was noticed and asked what she was doing there. This was the girl who fought the monsters. She asked Aharu if she hadn't seen the warning from the army and the guild. Aharu said that she had a task here. The girl immediately grabbed Aharu in her arms and flew off somewhere. Aharu didn't understand what the rush was about, since there were only a couple of soldiers. But the girl asked her to turn back. There was a whole army there. Aharu only just realized what she had gotten herself into. She clearly didn't expect there to be so many of them. The girls climbed up some tower. It was the safest there. The girl asked Aharu what she was doing here, to which Aharu replied that she was doing a task. The girl could not believe it, because she was also here to do a task. They had the same goal. The girl asked not to misunderstand but to refuse Aharu's task, but Aharu said that it would be easier for the two of them, to which she replied that Aharu could not even harm them, and she would gladly accept her help. But these monsters had entered into an immortality contract with the spirits. Aharu heard that during the war, the dead made contracts with spirits to continue fighting. They cannot be destroyed unless the contract is broken, and there are only two ways to do this. The first way is the skill of the guide. It can send the spirit to its home world, but they didn't have a person who had this skill. And this girl could help with the second method because it was the skill of the destroyer. You have to get rid of the spirit and then the one who made the contract. That's the essence of the destroyer. Haru had not yet had time to ask what the girl was doing, to which she replied that she was clearing the way for Haru to leave. The girl promised that she would wipe the soul to the ground with her flame. The girl went into battle, and Haru saw the action of the mastery of the destroyer in reality. Haru was amazed at how strong this girl was, even with all the enemies on the field. The girl thought that she had done everything necessary to let Haru leave. The girl was overcome by a monster, and Haru began to help. The girl realized that this was nothing more than the guide's skill. Haru stood in front of the girl and asked if she was okay. The girl was confused, and yet thought the guide's skill was amazing when she first saw it. Haru said that she had said that it would be easier with two people. Haru asked her not to kill them if possible, but simply to weaken them as much as possible. The girl considered it an insult. By seeing off the spirits, Haru only sends them to their homeworld, and destruction is quite cruel. It turns the spirits into nothing. The girl said that she would try to do everything carefully. Haru thanked her for understanding. The girl started laughing like crazy. Haru stood in a stupor and was outraged. The girl thought that it would be interesting after all what would come of this, but nothing could hurt. The girl introduced herself. Her name was Shion Hozugi. The girls set about the task. The mission was successful, and the girls were already at the bar. Shion offered to split the reward, a third for her and the rest for Haru. Haru refused and said that she would split it equally because Shion saved her life. The girl was surprised at how Haru was able to use the art of the guide so many times, and Haru was amazed at how well Shion weakened them, which was very timely. However, Haru was only interested in one thing: what happened to Shion in the middle of the battle. While drinking beer, Shion asked Haru if she knew about the 100-Year War. She said that she knew, but only from stories. Shion began to tell that the war between the empires of Shamar and Daram thundered 200 years ago. Elves and spirits served the empire of Daram, which was why the war was long, but the other side still won. The girl who worked in the bar came up and said that it was not like that at all. Shion was confused, because she was telling the story as she was told about the war. They apologized to her, and she continued the story. The prolongation of the war played into the hands of the Empire of Shamar. One of the clans dealt with the elves. It was a clan of exterminators, the Hozuki clan. After a desperate battle, Shion's ancestors exterminated many elves. But in the end, the last survivor managed to make a contract with the spirits, and the clan was cursed. Haru thought that it seemed that the elf had invested his life in making the contract, and that was why the curse was still in effect. Haru realized that the heartache she felt was the result of a curse, a sure sign that she would soon die. As it turned out, Shion was wandering. Haru said that she was traveling through these lands to send all the spirits back to the world. Shion said that this was quite ambitious, but it would take hundreds of years. It was a difficult task even for an elf, which even Haru agreed with. Shion suggested that Haru join forces. Shion had never seen a group with both a guide and a fighter, and she thought they would make a great team, and the two of them would get things done faster. Shion also said that her birthday is in 6 months, and she will already be 20, and it would be more fun in the team. Haru refused. Shion was confused. How after everything that happened, she could refuse. Haru explained it by the fact that although their goals were the same, their methods were different. Shion became upset and started throwing tantrums. However, Haru said that she could help. In the search, she offered to celebrate Shion's birthday together. Shion was delighted and agreed with her. In order to rest before the battle, they said goodbye. The girls went their separate ways. As Haru walked, she bumped into some huge man. She moved a little further and looked at him. The man approached Shion, and she began to ask him why they needed her for the army. The girl from the bar said that they had a couple of questions for Shion about her abilities, because the great spirit of the Orochi had disappeared, and they needed to find the one who did it and get his power. As she was leaving, Shion said that the reward should be transferred to her account in the guild. Her time alone was valuable, which she and the girl agreed on. Shion and Haru met. Shion was already ready to eliminate the spirits. Some men were wandering around the cave, but it seemed they had gotten separated from someone. The girls finally came to a huge mountain. One after another, Haru completed tasks with her bird glyph. Her first task was to catch a gang of mountain bandits, Tiger Claw. The second, to subdue a huge bird, Dodogil. Third, subdue the dangerous beast, Dodosando Toda. The fourth task, Shion fought the robbers. The quest to catch the dragon scale robbers was completed, and Shion's next quest to subdue the poisonous fire snake was also completed. Empire of Shamar, capital city of Niftower. After all the tasks were completed, the girls returned to the Blade and Shield Guild. The girls did a great job and received a reward for it. The girls asked to transfer everything to their account in the guild. Aharu noted that Shion was working very hard, to which Shion responded to Aharu with the same thing and told her to rest more. The girls sat down at a table and asked for a signature lunch to be brought to them both. Shion turned to Aharu and asked if she had found the spirit they were looking for, to which Aharu replied that she was working on it, but there were no leads yet. All the quests were only about finding bandits or subduing monsters. To which Shion replied that she had the same. A waitress came up to them and served 2 portions of the signature lunch. Aharu shared some of her lunch with Glyph, and the girls wished each other bon appetit. Shion remembered the day when I was struggling with the spirit, and it seems I saw a guide there. She said that they say there are very few of them left, and they are mostly decrepit old men. There is no way a guide could handle a great spirit. In Shinon's opinion, it is simply impossible. To which Aharu replied that she is not an old woman either, but Shinon told her not to pay attention to it. A girl approached them during their conversation and apologized for distracting them from their meal. She walked up to them and announced that she was the current guild master. The girls were already confused and were ready for anything. Shion thought that maybe someone had disappeared in the dungeon, and Aharu thought that they needed to save a guild member. The man who was sitting in front of them on the chair asked if he could ask them one question. He promised that the girls would be rewarded in return, which suited them just fine, but they didn't understand why they were called. To which the man replied that they were certainly the best in their field, both in completing tasks and in subduing monsters. If this was a regular rescue, he and the rest of the guild would have hired someone else. The man explained that there was a very strong monster in this dungeon, so there was no one else to send except them. The girls were already in anticipation of who it could be. The man said that there was a dragon hiding there. Shion refused the mission. Aharu didn't think she would refuse so easily. Dragons are the incarnations of deities, bringing misfortune and despair. From the time of the war to this day, dragons are feared more than great spirits. For Shion, fighting a dragon is like going to the grave. But she wanted to live a little longer. Aharu stood and already shook hands with this man, hoping that the reward would be worthy, which he said not to doubt. Shion generally stood in bewilderment. Was she really just saying all this to her partner? The main goal of the mission was to save the lost guild member. Aharu told Shion that they might not even have to fight the dragon. After all, the man meant, defeat it if you can. The dragon was quite a formidable opponent, but Aharu was confident that they would somehow cope. Even though this was a task in which he could only rely on these girls, but he had a condition, and if the girls refused this condition, he would not blame them. The task must be kept secret. No one except them should know about it. The girls were ready to carry out this task. Shion thought that they had planned it in vain, but the man was sure that everything would go well. On the way, the girls stopped to ask the way to this place. The girls were already standing at the entrance to the cave. It was quite high up there. Aharu asked how many floors there were. Shion said that according to the map, there were 3 floors. 4 hours after entering the dungeon, the girls came out to the Kerrang goblins. The girls went into battle. Aharu asked Shion why she didn't want to accept the task, because she was used to taking on the most difficult ones. Even as a child, she had to fight a dragon. The dragon knocked her out with one blow. He is still alive and flying somewhere. That's why Shion decided to travel. Aharu also once fought a dragon. It was a long time ago, and was Aharu's best one-on-one fight. The girl began to emotionally talk about how she defeated the dragon. Shion did not understand a word, and asked Glyph what she meant. The girls had already reached the depths of the dungeon. Even though they had a map, they could easily get lost. Shion asked Aharu if she thought the dragon was still alive. Aharu couldn't answer. But she knew one thing for sure. In a fight against a dragon, the chance of survival is negligible. At worst, only a couple of fairly strong items remained. Shion noticed that the girl fought like a real adventurer. Glyph flew to the girls screaming. The girls were confused about what was happening. The girls reached the lost adventurer. However, he was unconscious, and it seemed his name was Walter. The man came to and began to scream, stuttering, so that no one would approach him. The man was in shock, so he started attacking the girls. His sword almost went through Aharu, but she managed to stop him. Aharu explained to him that they would not hurt him, and they had come to save him. The man was touched. Shion slapped the man in the face. The guy named Walter apologized to the girls. He just swung his sword out of reflex. Shion called him a blockhead, saying that was no way to greet saviors. Aharu said that they were glad to see him alive. She explained to him that the guild had sent them to get him. The girl said that they had been told that he wasn't alone, but that there were 2 others with him. There really were 3 of them, but he had been alone for a long time, and the rescue request, as he understood, was sent by his employee Rana. He was glad that she was able to escape. They stood up and were about to leave, when suddenly a sound came from the cave, like the grinding of metal. Walter began to scream in panic that it was him again. The girls didn't understand what was going on while the man was going crazy. A dragon passed over them and went further into the depths. Apparently, this was the dragon the report was talking about. Aharu said she had a bad feeling about it. Walter explained that this was the dragon that killed everyone. Group of 4 adventurers stand cautiously over a large, defeated reptilian creature inside a rocky cave. They discuss details of the attack and initial size of the beast. A battle takes place between armored fighters and monstrous creatures in a cracked, rocky environment. One fighter, wielding a sword, defends aggressively against an attack that fatally injures an ally. A large, fierce creature with scales is pinning a battered warrior to the ground among rubble. The warrior's armor is cracked and damaged, showing signs of a brutal fight. The scene conveys intense struggle and imminent danger. 3 armed figures stand in a rocky cave, alert and ready. A shadowy creature with a grotesque hand appears nearby, making a rattling noise. Gist: armed figures confront a lurking creature in a cave. Soldiers in armor express urgency and fear while ordering a retreat from an attacking enemy in a forest setting. A beaten man sits on cracked ground, holding his head with both hands, and recounts their failed escape and separation from a companion. 2 women stand nearby against a rocky background, one responding simply. The man reflects on their dire situation while the women engage in quiet dialogue. A character stands holding a large staff with crystalline elements, surrounded by rocky terrain. She explains that eating a human triggered a growth process, replenishing missing magical energy for evolution. She states, "True dragons are fully developed at birth and would not act this way." A figure stands before a cave entrance set in the rocky terrain. The figure wears a cloak and holds a staff, addressing a creature resembling a dragon. Statement concludes that despite the resemblance, the creature is labeled a monster. 2 women face each other against a rough stone wall background. One with light hair confirms the other's statement about a task related to their specialties and spirits. They discuss a mission potentially linked to spirits. A group discusses preparing for a confrontation, confirming their purpose for gathering. Someone questions the intention to fight. A rugged man in torn clothing stands in a rocky cavern as large, rock-like objects fly toward him. He looks surprised and speaks a single syllable. 2 girls notice a man's intense reaction with surprise. The man screams and stutters amid rising tension. Sounds of distress fill the air as the scene unfolds. 2 characters engage in battle, poised with bows drawn amid a rocky, jagged environment. Tension rises as arrows are about to be released. A shouting woman faces a man lying on the ground near a large stone or object. An unusual creature with big eyes and a stitched mouth appears threateningly. A figure clings tightly to a large bird in flight over a cracked, barren ground. 2 cloaked figures observe from below as the bird cries out loudly. 2 figures stand in a rocky cave entrance, observing a large, cocoon-like structure hanging within the cave walls. A gigantic creature with sharp teeth and intense eyes roars loudly at 2 characters facing it. The creature's skin is rough and scales are visible across its body. Spikes protrude from its head while saliva drips from its mouth. A towering dragon with sharp, segmented scales faces 2 characters, creating a tense confrontation. The dragon appears menacing and dominant, while the characters prepare for a possible encounter. The scene highlights a critical moment of suspense and threat. 2 girls discuss an enemy's displeasure after they took something from it. The first girl looks concerned and warns that the enemy seems to be attacking. The second girl smiles as she suggests the enemy disliked losing its treat. The enemy is depicted by crystalline spikes rising from the ground, indicating an imminent attack. Panel shows a monstrous creature with spiked skin roaring fiercely as debris flies around it. Ground cracks intensify the chaos of the scene. 2 characters confront a large, intimidating creature in a rocky environment. One prepares to strike with a sword, while the other summons swirling flames in their hand. The walls are jagged, emphasizing the danger of the encounter. Gist: Characters battle a monstrous creature with sword and fire. A cloaked figure confronts a massive, serpent-like creature with a wide open mouth amidst a jagged, rocky landscape with sparse vegetation. The figure appears to be dodging or attacking the creature's powerful strike. The key moment reveals a dangerous clash between the two. Two characters observe a large creature breaking structures with powerful claws. They note the creature's strength is linked to a contract and compare its abilities to dragons. The scene shows destruction with dynamic action lines emphasizing the creature's force. A figure with a staff faces a massive, swirling energy or force in a barren landscape, displaying resolve. A close-up reveals the figure's determined expression, highlighting their focus. The narrative suggests the figure views the opponent as merely a lizard. A mysterious, cloaked figure appears surrounded by dynamic energy lines and shadows, speaking about someone who made a pact with spirits to become a dragon. The tone is serious and dramatic. A figure in a dark cloak stands amidst ruins as multiple explosions erupt in the background, sending debris flying. The wall is cracked and crumbling from the force of the blasts. A character fires a weapon at a large, reptile-like creature while another figure prepares to confront the monster by drawing a sword. The creature appears aggressive and ready to attack. Gist: characters engage a dangerous reptilian foe. A young woman in a detailed outfit with fur trim breaks through a rocky barrier with a powerful kick, surrounded by dynamic speed lines and flying debris. The scene emphasizes force and motion. Gist: the woman delivers a strong, forceful kick shattering rocks. A warrior with a spear leaps forward as an explosion occurs behind her. Two onlookers, a girl with short hair and a bandage on her cheek and another with a staff, observe intently. The short-haired girl senses something is wrong, while the other urges to strike. Two characters walk on rocky terrain, engaged in conversation. One wears a cloak, the other carries a staff and a container. Their dialogue concerns a spirit bound by contract, whose voice remains unheard. Two characters discuss a third person who seems to lack willpower and appears as if bound. They conclude that the contract was likely signed under duress. A monstrous creature growls with sharp teeth visible in the first panel, showing menace and aggression. A large, serpent-like creature lunges toward two characters, one with a halo and cape, the other in a fur-trimmed cloak. Intense confrontation is evident. A cloaked figure sits near a rocky cave entrance, where a large, round, white creature and two women with staffs stand in front of the dark cave opening. Three characters stand together outdoors, surrounded by trees under a cloudy sky. The woman on the left wears a fur-trimmed cloak and looks engaged. The middle figure holds a feathered object and smiles, while the person on the right appears embarrassed or uneasy. The scene conveys a mix of camaraderie and awkwardness among the group. Man with an emblem on his coat examines a document thoughtfully, uttering a sound of contemplation. Adjacent panels show a building facade adorned with flags and an emblem above the entrance. The scene sets a formal, possibly official atmosphere. A man sits at an ornate desk covered with papers, addressing two cloaked figures standing before him. The room has wooden floors and walls with framed windows and drapes. He reports that Steel Lizard has made a contract with a spirit and has become a dragon-like creature. An older man in a suit questions whether the method for forming contracts has been lost. A younger figure in a cloak explains the contract was not made by a lizard or spirit, but forcibly bound by someone else. A girl with long dark hair assures a blonde girl that they understand spirits well and can be trusted. Characters celebrate completing a task and receiving a reward. One expresses relief about the reward, noting they thought it wouldn't be given because the challenge was from a monster, not a dragon. A woman with long dark hair asks another character named Aharu-san to stay a moment. Aharu-san, wearing a fur-trimmed cloak and a bird hat, agrees hesitantly. An older man says he needs to talk. The gist: a serious conversation is about to begin. Two girls talk on a stairway outside a building. One says she will get a table and order food while the other thanks her. A figure with a bag stands at an open door above them. The scene is calm and casual. A man in a suit sits behind a desk with an emblem, thanking someone for staying. A person with short hair, wearing a cloak with a small creature on their shoulder, asks what concern the man has with them. Room with wooden floor and detailed wall decorations holds three people: a seated man at a desk reading a book, and a standing woman carrying an older man. Dialogue indicates no rush or concern about time. An older man with light hair speaks, asking if someone has heard about the 100 Years' War. He leans forward slightly, showing engagement in the conversation. A young character with short hair, wearing a detailed cloak and a collar with a rose symbol, speaks while looking slightly to the side. Two speech bubbles show a brief conversation in Russian, suggesting agreement and a question about who hasn't heard. The background includes a window with wooden frames and a decorated flag or banner. Long ago, the Shamar and Daram empires continuously clashed. Shamar Empire broke a pact by using spirits in the war. Conflicts flared often between these empires. Characters stand amid ruins and large rubble, with a dark, ominous shadow shape in the background. Speech bubbles speak of significant successes and an empire being overthrown, implying a great battle or conquest has occurred. An older man discusses a story about exterminating all elves with a younger woman, who acknowledges knowing this story. They exchange looks, the man smiling at the end. An older man speaks to a young woman in a formal setting with a window behind. He mentions a nuance and that most people know a different story. The man and woman both appear serious. A character explains the meaning of an inscription about an empire that used spirits' power for war and defeated elves who had helped a woman. A person holding a plushie addresses a man sitting behind a desk, who speaks about a version only told to a very small group of people. The dialogue reveals some secret information being discussed. A person with short hair and a fur-lined hood stands by a door under a chandelier, while another person with longer hair, seen from behind, speaks to